the default is public, right? Okay. Give me
Yeah.
1 second. Let me show we're
Go,
on.
go on. I think you're there already, my dear.
um,
Yes, you're going. Start talking. Good morning. Hi, it's Jeff.
I
How you doing, everybody?
Hi everyone.
We are here after a little break because last week we had the amazing John Fusco, who was way more interesting than just us alone and was awesome. And then Marsha was all into it. And then Fusco passed Marsha's individual streaming numbers and she got real bitter and angry. So I don't really know what's going to happen about the future of those two and their friendship, but here we are. So Marsha, what do you got? You got some questions and stuff? Like, I think since we last spoke solo, the strike has ended and the world opened back up and things got strange. And it's like, I know there's a lot of weird controversies, like, well, what does this mean? And is there any buying market and any of that stuff? And it's like, look, evidentially, we're going to have to wait and see. Circumstantially, you got to feel like they didn't bust their bums to get the fourth quarter restored so that they could just sort of sit on their heels. So even though I don't think it's going to happen quite as fast as everybody wants, things are still happening. The Great Aquila Cooper had that sale yesterday from like a story, or 2 days ago or whatever, from a short story or a little novella, that those things go around. So it's like, yeah, there's stuff to go do. So don't get tell me one time the market was easy or ready or there for the plucking. You know what I mean? It's never that way. You always got to go do it or take your shots. So
That's exactly, Jeff. It's always a hustle, isn't it? So always been a hustle.
I mean, yeah, it really is. There's a screenwriting 1%ers or maybe 5% where it's like you don't, it's not work, but for everybody else, it's pretty, it heads down, like keep working and, keep the right attitude and keep hustling jobs and putting your career together kind of stuff. So that's just what it is. So, all right. So what do you got, Marcia? You got some questions?
Yes, we do have some questions. And I think maybe we'll just first start off because some of them are, like some of the common ones. Everyone asks about networking, mentoring, and, career development coaching. And maybe just talk through real quickly, because we do have a lot of new writers, but there's also people who've, been writing for a while, maybe getting some traction, and or coming back, you know how that ebbs and flows. And you always said the first one's quote easy and the second one's even harder. So maybe just do kind of a very general, if you're brand new, what do you advise for people just starting out, maybe writing their first or second script, and kind of walk through along, and because that's going to cover a lot of questions, and then I'll go back to some of the Q&As just so that way
I'm trying to find the specific questions in there, but I heard some
like, so for if you're brand new, you're writing your first, second script, what should they really focus on right now? Like thinking that way.
So you're right at the beginning, you're working on your stuff. What should you focus on? Getting better and better every single time. Learning how to revise, learning how to tell when something's really ready for the world to see. And when it's time for you to put it away a little bit and rewrite it and all that kind of stuff. What do you got to do? You got to sharpen your skills. You got to keep researching. Then you got to do all your hustling on the side about how to get in and who to meet and how how you're going to achieve that and how you're going to present yourself in that world and the avenues you're going to go after. So there is a lot on your mind when you are a burgeoning screenwriter, and that mentorship thing is pretty critical. I had one, I just want to say about mentors, the problem with mentors is this. When I was 21 years old, I made friends with the Maryland film commissioner, who was a guy who was 48 at the time. And he had come back from a Hollywood career to Baltimore and worked for this place. Film commissions are places that bring productions to the state or to the city. And he was working for Maryland. And I would go to see him and I just kept trying to work him for this, how can I get connected through this guy? How can he introduce me to some people and make some meetings? And he kept giving me first advice for a really long time. And it was all this stuff I didn't want to hear about career maintenance and the length of the industry and your self-esteem and finding your happiness outside of all this and everything. And I would just look at this guy every time we got together and be like, dude, could you just hook me up with the meetings? I'm not going to screw my life up like yours. Just because everything went terribly for you doesn't mean these things are going to happen to me. And I just sort of blew by what he said. And I think that's what happens with a lot of mentorships. I think mentors are there, each in their own way, giving you some pretty good specifics about their own experiences and what happened and the path to take creatively and professionally. I just think the problem is when many of us are starting out, whether we're, that young or not, we're still naive to the industry in a lot of ways, no matter how savvy we think we are. And we think that these things that are going to happen to everybody are never going to happen to you, or these basic roadblocks that everybody goes through and everything aren't going to apply to you and all that stuff. And that's exactly how I felt at that time. And then 9 years later, I went through every single one of those things and all of that stuff that he had mentioned. And it was as hard as he said, and it was as difficult and windy a path as he said. But when I got, when I got to the end of it, I was like, you know what? I probably would have cut this time in half if I would have listened to everything he said, since all of it happened along the way. So I just think sometimes as humans, we have this thing where it's like, until we actually experience it, we can't fully internalize advice. But I encourage you to try to collect it from everywhere, from all the places that you can, and like I say all the time in our Zooms, like, collect it from everywhere, listen to it from everywhere, but only internalize the stuff that really truly resonates with you. If it doesn't resonate with you, no guru path or person, no matter how successful or whatever thing, whatever institution, is going to be that helpful if their stuff doesn't resonate. If it does, all the better. But there's not a singular guru path out there to take. Create a greatest hits from all the different people you come across. All right, you have another specific one, Marcia.
Yes, and what would you say would be a successful mentor-mentee relationship?
Look, what's the end game for every mentee? To get opened doors. What's the path through to that? Show the mentor how serious you are, how committed you are, how good you are. You know what I mean? I think for me, a red flag in the mentor relationship is when people ask them to reshape things in the mentor's own desired image of how something should be, when the reality is it always needs to stay in the writer's voice and the writer's style. What needs to help them is not change it so it resembles your own work. What they need is, here's how you explore your own voice. This, like, here's how you take what you've got and harness it and make it work for you, and that's what most people miss. You start out with all this great electricity, crackling, sparkling talent, and you don't know how to harness it yet. And then later, you know how to harness it as the sparkle starts to slow. So it's like an even mix. So while you are all a sparkle, it's nice to learn some, find people that you can trust. And when people say things that resonate with you, continue to listen to them. And when they say things that don't resonate with you, don't. And then, and build your own little repertoire of technique from that, along with your own gut.
And with mentors, and it's not always about someone who's just going to shape your script, and ship it off to somebody, right? Like it's not always that way, right?
And hopefully you get there. The people who will ship your stuff off to somebody else are the people who are going to do it the people who respect what you do and look at the work and get really and like it and want to open some doors. And I really don't know very many people who didn't get in by somebody opening a door for them. That's just the big reality. I've met very few, if any, people who are like, oh, I got in from this or I got in from that, and it wasn't, I met this person who introduced me to that person, introduced me to that person, and somewhere down the chain, something started to spark and happen. So opening doors is a responsibility of writers. It's just not everybody's, we all came together all through this strike and everybody talked about solidarity and all that stuff. And then everybody post-strike sort of went back to, seemed to retract into their corners. And it's like, well, if you want to continue that spirit of solidarity, part of that is opening doors. When I first started, the two people who show ran the original real Beverly Hills 90210 opened a million doors for me and couldn't have been any kinder. And I've just always looked back and appreciated that. Like, they didn't have any reason to do it. It didn't make, all they were doing was furthering somebody who they just saw something in that they liked. That's it. And I think that's what we're all supposed to do. But if you don't have that kind of mentor, and some people just aren't going to be that kind of mentor, figure out what kind you got and extract from them what you can get. Some of them might be great with creative. Some of them might be great with teaching you your own version of hustle, even if they don't do anything actually about enacting it. It's like there's something to gain from everybody. So don't look for the jumbo package in any one human. Go pluck from different people what you can, different things as you learn along the way. That's what I would do. And listen, lest I get tagged with this, that's cold and transactional. Let me just say, no. Anyway, it's just not. That's just not how it goes. It's like, how is it not cold and transactional to go target writers as your friends? It's like, that's a silly thing. It's like, it's not like you're, out there like some quid pro quo Hannibal Lecter kind of thing. What you're doing is you're just fostering relationships that symbiotically grow together, and you can help them from where you are as much as they can help you from where you are, and then all ships rise together. And that's how things work. I've seen several levels of movement like that, and some of your favorite filmmakers who elevate people all around them. You know what I mean? You don't have Matt Reeves without J.J. Abrams,
And and it's so funny, and we'll get to networking in a second because it's true. Like when you really look at the history, and you probably dug down, dug deep. I mean, with a lot of these filmmakers or the successful filmmakers, and when you really look at their history, they all rose together. They were
Mhm.
all friends. They've all brought each other in, from their home
And
movies to
yes,
college,
but
and
when they make the books and they write the documentaries, they talk about the directors.
yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Like look at the, the Scorsese, Coppola, Spielberg, Lucas cluster, that existed at that time. That's from Easy Riders Raging Bulls book, which is a great read if you've never read it. Um, it's like if you look at that group of people, it wasn't just them. There were like 8, 10 writers, 8, 10 performers, 8, 10 tech people from different things. All those careers rose and worked together. They all knew each other from around. They all shared crew and people with each other when they found stuff that worked. They all rewrote each other's stuff or like contributed, or Spielberg would go shoot second unit on stuff. It's like they just shared in those experiences, and they all rose together. And when one of them would falter a little bit, the other ones would be there to pick them back up with something, and always have something to sort of help each other out. So it's like those kind of relationships aren't crass or wrong. That it's just about like, do you want to win or not? So
So speaking of, like we'll get in, and that leads us into networking because everyone else is, I think a lot of writers are like, I have a script and how can I get in? And we're gonna get into some of those specific questions, but in general, and it's the same thing. It's like they're trying to jump this whole ship and they don't even have a community. And you're talking about these brilliant filmmakers and everyone goes, oh, he got in with this movie. No, I mean, Spielberg gave plenty of tough notes, Scorsese to Lucas, on Star Wars when he first filmed it. So that's really missing. But let's get into networking. What do you feel as new writers? How should they really network? What's really important at this point?
now there's dual networking tools. There's in person and online, and I think you got to use both effectively. If you're in town, you're going to be able to use the in person. If you're not in town, you're going to be exclusively online. You can do it exclusively online. I knew this guy named me who in 1994 was able to use the nascent early emails to basically figure out important figures emails in the industry and make contact with them and get to know a few people, and ended up in some really great places because of that. It's like that kind of hustle online really does work. The trick is just don't be a hustler, be a real person. It's like be you all the time and create genuine relationships out of those things that spark in those things, as opposed to like user relationships or quid pro quo relationships. And it's like you get to know people like that in an online way, or your presence is known online, people will reach out about helping, because some people are just predetermined to be the type who are going to help, and some people aren't. And the ones who are going to be helpful will reach out and find you, and you'll end up in little back and forths, and the ones who aren't going to be helpful will never do that. So it's not even so much that you got to like try to bother them. Once there's some sort of genuine contact made and some sort of back and forth exchange, the people who will help will usually offer. In person in this town, it's like the industry has never changed. There's the biggest scene to break in when you're young is the assistants circle. It's like the assistants all work for important people, and their adjacency to important people makes them important in this like entry level rung of the world. And most people, when they first move to town, fall in with like the assistant level people because they're of the same age, they're going to the same places, they have the same interests, they have the same references, and they're in not competitive jobs, they're in like compatible jobs to help each other and do things. How does somebody get ahead as an assistant at an agency? They find something awesome and give it to their boss. You know what I mean? It's like it's that's part of the equation. So it's like in the living social circle out here, it's definitely like there's the young version and the new people who arrive here and all that stuff. And it's like, in my zone, that means through like the late 30s, you know what I mean? But you know what I'm talking about. It's like, and they network in person and get to know each other because of the social circle and everything. And it's like, just remember, you're in LA. Just because you see some shabbily dressed, bozo sitting somewhere at a bar doesn't mean that they don't have like a 9-picture deal at Sony. You know what I mean? So it's like, just don't judge people by their thing. Get to know people that you like, and eventually those things come out like that way. Networking is just a tricky thing. I don't think there's a writer alive who got into writing because they were like, hey, I'm all into sales and being an extrovert and talking to people and making contact to people. Um,
That's
you
how
know,
the early writers always did. Everyone hustled. They went out to see who they could meet. And I know a personal story of a guy who worked on LA Law because he was friends with my boss who could get anyone into any studio. But he told him is like, if you want to learn to write, go find a rep. The guy hustled. The next thing you know, my boss was basically saying, go out and meet people, do the work,
yeah.
you know?
Look, here's the thing. Why does it sound trite and privileged and obnoxious to say you got to go hustle for it? Because it is. When is it not obnoxious? When you can detail how said hustle works. You know what I mean? It's like, because the truth is, despite it sounding bad, that is how you get ahead. You hustle out there and make it happen for yourself as an entrepreneur. How do you do that specifically? It's something we get into all the time on our things, and it's something that I'm like happy to talk about a bunch of now. You know, it's like very specifically, there's a set of decisions that you make about how to pursue this career. And the very first one is quite often, do I stay home or do I move to LA? You know, and then once you're here, it's, do I work in the industry or do I not work in the industry? You know, which one's the best for me in my career path? And, you know, there's a million decisions all along this way of hustling. Yeah, look, do I think it's crazy to say to people, well, just go make a feature? Yeah. I mean, who has the resources to make a great feature? You know, very few people. Supremely gifted directors and editors have the ability to go make a super contained, cheap feature. But the average person does not, which you can do pretty much these days is beg, borrow, and cheat and steal to get a short made, you know, if you're inclined to make something like that. And I mean, by short, you know, I've been recruited for studio jobs for things that were like a minute long clip of something. And they were like, what's this world? What's this universe? How do you build this? What's the movie? It's like, it ain't like they need, you know, so the only rule is impress them with what you're doing. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to deviate from your thing about networking there, but it's like, free yourself from the fear of telling yourself you're a big phony if you go network. If you don't think Hemingway and Fitzgerald were networking, that's crazy. You know what I mean? It's like, of course they were. So
And you know what? People pay for networking all the time. It's transactional when they enter contests. It's the same thing. All you're doing is paying someone else to go reach other people. You know, so I mean, it's the same thing because at some point you have to meet people. You know,
listen, I think
so
there's all kinds of ways, whatever that it is, though, however you get there, ultimately
it's
in the end, it's about personal introductions 99% of the time. So it's like whatever way that it is that you find to get there, you do it. Some people figure out somebody they know with an attachment. Some people chase the people that they're really into, like, and get to know them, sort, you know, like on online or in some other way, and approach them. Some people, you know, work their ass off to go get after like an agent or a manager or something to then go, you know, approach those people. It's like there's a million, you know, the problem is why it sounds weird when you get answers back when you ask established writers or anybody else about the career specifics of getting ahead, is it's such an individual process for everybody that it's not like there really is some standard. So what they're trying to tell you when they say generic things like hustle and get yourself out there and all that kind of stuff, I don't think most of them are ill-meaning. I think most of them just don't like have the ability right there to encapsulate the twisty turny road that it took for them to actually succeed and then recreate that for you in some sort of palatable way. And it's like, I think the more we understand that, the better. So it's like, what are we looking for from an individual person when we're networking in some way to learn from them? Not the whole story, not everything, not every piece of the puzzle. What we're looking for is just some key aspects of what they did and some great tips, tricks, and techniques that they may have to offer. But anybody's individual, how they made it all the way through story isn't going to be that helpful to you. You got to tailor all that stuff to yourself. So end of the day, is it a annoying thing to hear these maxims like you got to hustle, you got to do this, you got to do that? Absolutely, totally understandable. Oh, I almost cursed when I said, look, I cut myself off. Aren't you excited? I hated hearing that when I was 23 and 26 and 29. You know what I mean? Like I hated it. But in the end, it was just literally getting myself up off the mat and saying, you got to go out there and just make it happen. And my version of go out there and make it happen was I came out here for 6 weeks from Baltimore with a cheap rental with my writing partner. And we went through the trades and everything every single day and tracked every single deal and like tried to approach every single person who had active things going on and things that we could, do. And we had a loose affiliation with an agent at that time who was sort of hip pocketing us, but we screwed that up by sending, queries to other agents referencing that we had a hip pocket and naming the person. Like we did every stupid thing that you could do, but we just threw it all at the wall to try to find out what would work. And guess what happened in the end? We met somebody who introduced us to somebody else, who introduced us to the production company, original film, Neil Moritz, that we first ended up going out to like sell our very first thing to. It was just like, that opening doors trick is the only one that works. However you think of it, the objective goal of your relationships and you're meeting people and you're hustling through is not just that, yes, do you want them to open doors for you? Totally. Do you want to then get yourself in a position to remember what that is and open doors? Totally. You know what I mean? That's how it doesn't become crass. That's how it becomes real. If you become one of those writers who wants to close the door behind you in the industry because you're insecure, I just don't think that says very much about how you feel about your talent. I think if you're in there and you're working and you're having a good time and you know that it's the job of a lifetime and you see some lovely people struggling to get in and they're really good and you check out their stuff and you really endorse it and you go see it on Friday night, what's it going to hurt you to open a door or two for those people and help spark that in? So that's and other than that, what is mentorship about? Or what are you asking about? Hustling and networking? Or
you have to hustle. People hustle when they're buying a house. I mean, you're going everywhere. So I don't understand when people are like, someone can introduce me. I'm like, you know what it's like when your car breaks down, you're looking for a mechanic. You're asking everybody under the sun, right? So
it's just not insincere. It's not insincere to want something. You know what I mean? It's not insincere to chase a big goal and to really throw yourself into it, especially if you're willing to do emotional from the heart stuff and really like make something good that you can care about. You know what I mean? If you work your ass off and sell your soul to do trite garbage, then maybe you wasted your time. But if you work your ass off, forsake every single aspect of your other life and make that ultimate deal with the devil and then sneak in, then you're compelled to help recruit others to the cult. I mean, you're compelled to help keep the door open for other people. So
I see JR is laughing at my house bike. It's true. You hustle. And if you want something bad enough, you're going to ask. And I think just relationships in general, treat everybody like you do, whether you're going to a friend's party, you don't know other people, everyone's human beings and, just
that's all you got to remember. There's no rule, there's no this, there's no that. Just the bottom line truth is, none of us asked to be here. We're all here. We all entered into the same strange world. Everything was already owned and created and this had been thatted before we got here. And we all had to carve our space out in this place and try to claim something. And we all want this. And it's worth it. And it's not impossible. And as my wife likes to say, the mere fact that you have a career goes to show people that it's hugely possible. You know what I mean? So there you go.
Sorry, my wire is a little unstable. Oh my gosh, you know what? It was, I'm turning into a zombie. It's time.
Nice. Oh, right. You got
the emergency system today.
Nice.
Sorry, guys.
There's always some historic relic that you provide that people could go back and date when these things happen. So
yes.
What's your, you got something else, right?
Yes. So let's now get to some practical tips on networking, because there's people who are now leaving, looking to leave California. It's always the out of state. How do they meet people? And I'm hoping, number one, that what you gave as building your local community and the people you already know, that they realize that's the first place you start. But so, how about some practical things, how to network in a meaningful way when you have zero connections, which I think everybody has a connection. And that's, without
look, if I was out there cold, just doing it right now, what I would do is I would target the people. I would look at the stuff that really inspires me, the stuff that I aspire to be, and the people where I think that my sensibility vibes with them. And I would look at those movies and TV shows, and I would look at the credits of those, and I would locate the various producers attached, and I would learn what I could about them. And somewhere in that pile is somebody smaller, like a baby producer type who brought this thing into the others. And I would try to figure out who that was and then locate whether or not they had some presence on social media or whatever. And if they did, I would follow. And I would just, if something genuine came up that I knew about, like I always say, it's like, I know everything there is about Jack the Ripper. You know, I don't know why, I just know everything there is about Jack the Ripper. So if like, you know, Francois Truffaut was alive and he tweeted something about Jack the Ripper, I could give like a legitimate, caring answer about a legitimate topic that I care about. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's the truth, sincerity. What will never work in those things is just like LOLs or just, you know, like instantly like, it's like what works is a real human encounter back and forth. And then human beings are human beings. That happens a few times. People stick in people's minds and some sort of like back and forth forms. And that's the chance where occasionally one of these things can turn to, so what are you up to? How's your little journey going? Like, you know, all of those things. So the out of town, I mean, that would be my number one target, is people whose work I respect, not the frontline PGA credited producer, not the star of the thing, not this or that, but some of the people that helped make it happen in a really meaningful way, and how I could get to know them and introduce my stuff and me to them, you know? That's really the biggest way. And the other biggest way, again, listen, you want to get bricks thrown at you by screenwriters, you know, pre-WGA screenwriters. It's like, you just, you say things that are too general, but it's like, there is one thing that's really true. While you're doing all this hustle stuff and everything, it won't mean anything if you don't keep perfecting your craft and moving forward. You know, like you really I think I wrote 17 or 18 scripts before I you know, sold anything. And those were the ones that were just like after college. Like I don't count all the silly ones that I wrote in college that, you know, like, you know, that are just ridiculous, like the rat mailer. So, you know, I'm talking about just post-professional. It's like, you know, 17 or 18 of them. And, you know, before anybody paid attention to anything or gave anything a chance. And it's like, what did I not do collectively to almost any of those scripts? Rewrite them. You know, I would have an idea, I would execute it, I would say, this is great. Nothing would happen. I wouldn't figure out a way to make anything happen with it. And I'd move on to the next one and it would go back into the pile. And it's like, you know, there's nothing wrong with just really digging into your craft. I bet you that almost all of your heroes at some point traded a whole lot of their mental space and happiness and ability to do anything else in life and threw themselves into the act of learning how to do this thing by just really going deep inside it and getting lost in it for a while. And I know I did. It's called my 20s. You know, I disappeared into trying to learn how to write screenplays when I was 21. And at 29, I emerged with my first sale, you know, but it's like, life went on all around me, but I didn't care about anything else in that entire window of time. And while everybody else was out having a great time in their 20s, I was like hunkered in a room with another guy working on script after script after script and trying to like get to a place where we ultimately figured out like a little secret code to get there, kind of. And that's just really, so it sounds trite, but it really does come down to hard work. So don't discount that. It's like, you got to do all the other stuff simultaneously. What's the cruel reality of this thing? The fantasy is we sit and write. What's the truth? We sit and write about, you know, 30-40% of the time if you're lucky. And the rest of the time you're hustling and making things happen, you know, so.
So on a very practical thing though, because yes, you can keep, you know, pick that one person and find a way to connect with them. But on journal, like you even mentioned, you talked to the film commission. Nobody ever talks about the practical things that you can do now with people that you can reach. So maybe just pinpoint on a couple of things that people can do. It doesn't hurt to, you know, reach out to people in the film commission, get involved locally, you know, reach out to local filmmakers, you know, network.
If you're somewhere else outside of Los Angeles, maybe so, because what are they? They're people who interact with producers here who are looking to get tax credit deals and stuff, and they get to know them through the course of work just like anybody else. And, you know, it takes a risk on their part to say, hey, let me reach out and do this. But that's why I kept going back to see the Maryland Film Commissioner over and over again. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's why I let him read stuff or begged him to read stuff at first and then listen to some of his, you know, good notes after and things like that, and tossed, you know, fixes back to him and stuff like that. He saw dedication and then decided to do it. So yeah, I know everybody's looking for a practical checklist, but it's like baby producers, as a writer, are your number one best chance. Okay, like they're available, they're out there, their names are on the credits of movies and TV shows you like, but they themselves are not yet huge. And when we do our Zooms and we do our stuff, I talk about a bunch of these people, a bunch of whom are friends, and they don't have large followings, they don't have this, they don't have that, but what they do have is what it takes to go out there and get passionate about something and get it done. What baby producers don't have is a deal somewhere, or overhead covered, or the capability to go out and buy expensive scripts from really established writers. So what are they always doing? Looking for that new awesome thing and that new awesome writer that they can like take around and try to get something snowballed with project wise. So your number one best friend, whether you know it or not, networking wise, is those people who don't have the WGA credit, the PGA credit, the PGA credit on a movie. Not Jason Blum, but the person who has some associate producer credit, who found the material and brought it in and handed it to them. Like, that's the one. And they're all out there. They're on everything that has been made that you love, and they are looking for you as much as you're looking for them. And
I could say I met some producers that a lot of them. Oh, sorry, my camera is the wire.
Your name is Marsha. We know.
I know. I met a lot. I met producers that. This
is a good producer.
What is it? No, that left LA. You know what I mean? And they've all gone back home, and so yeah, they're everywhere. I don't know what's going on, Mike.
Yeah, a lot of people left during COVID. A lot of people are going to leave post-strike, or did leave during strike even. It's just the way it goes. You don't come to LA and you're like, oh yeah, my friend lived here in 1997 on this street, and go there and find them usually. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not that kind of town. You know what I mean? So it's like, some people are lifers, but most people come and they stay for a period of time, and then at some point leave and go back and do something else, or reinvent when they get tired of this. You know what I mean? So it's not I saw somewhere, I have a sports friend that he's like, NFL not for long, and it's like, that's how these careers are. Like, can you pop off a 50-year career? Absolutely. Are you more likely to pop off an 18-month career? Sure. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just the way that it goes. Like you said earlier, that second sale's hard,
Yep. So, but basically, yes, reach out. There's meetups, there's, groups on a lot of social media, filmmakers, producers, in places all over the country.
And the people themselves are out there. They're online. They're on Instagram. They're on Twitter. They're all in these places. You go find your 10 favorite movies that most match your movie's tone, or your 10 favorite pilots that most match your pilot's tone, or the people that you think would resonate with you. You look at those credits, somewhere in there's 5, 6, 7 baby producers amongst that pile of 10 who helped find those things and bring them in. And they're out there looking for their next one too, because they want to graduate and to be bigger and bigger themselves. And why can you feel good about them? Because their name's already in the credit of a movie, or a TV show. It's like, there's nothing to prove to you. It's already out there. So to me, it's everybody asks, what's one practical, what are the practical ways? That's the single biggest practical way you'll ever find. And then they say, well, what about agents and managers? Don't I query them? Sure you do. But you don't expect the same rate of return that you would get off of querying baby producers.
They're looking for a deal.
Yeah, baby producers are looking for stuff. And don't call them baby producers to their face. One of my favorite baby producers of all time is a lovely person from Jersey. And if you think I would call her a baby producer to her face, I certainly would not. But they're just, they get the job done because they have to. They're still in the hustle stage of their careers where they're rising and growing too. And look, I don't know if you know much about physics, but two rising and growing energies together can only help propel each other. You know what I mean? It's like, it's greater sometimes than the sum of the parts. So don't be afraid of that kind of stuff. The ones to be wary of are the 9 generations ago's sitcom third leading this or that, who wants to EP your thing or this or that. It's like all those, it's like what you want to look for is like a certain currency and a certain ongoing nature. And I'm not trying to be cruel. Like, you can come back and you can do whatever from whatever, and you can have a really long career in here. I'm not trying to be that person. What I'm trying to say is, if I'm out there and I'm looking to kickstart this thing, and a lot of, because that's another question, sorry, just we'll wrap soon, but it's like, that's another question I get asked a lot, is like, is it worth having X attached as the EP of my show? Listen, that depends on a whole lot about X.
Okay, hold on. Can we hold that one? Because we do have a few business questions. So hold on, let's finish up networking. And you guys, it is 100% possible to also meet people not on social media. So I approve of that. I just have to say, and I am not in LA. So it is, you just have to meet people.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
the thing. But it's not
But
about
listen, but the
going out.
problem is when you say you have to meet people, it sounds crass. How are the best
Yeah.
ways to meet people? Get to know them, feeling out ahead of time, and then come
Yeah.
and visit and get yourself
Network,
established
go
and
to
feel part of the
events.
community.
Yes.
It's one truism. Look, if you are going to commit to staying home because you're more comfortable staying home while you pursue this, the alternate thing is a lot of the money that you save in the cost of staying at home will be burned up coming here to spend time and become an increasing presence. And it's like, so don't look at it as a huge cost saving sometimes necessarily, because you will visit. So it's like, and really even the, I visited LA 25 times before I moved here, at least, and even on the trips when I would show up and everybody would cancel because like inevitably things get canceled and moved, I would still feel good about being here and being a part of it. When I would come in on a trip and get the high of somebody really getting into something, it would motivate me to understand like it's real, you can touch it, it's true. Even though you'd fly back on a Saturday morning and by Sunday night it all felt like a dream, you know what I mean? But it's like, don't let it feel that way. Like you just got to continue to, you got to continue to work it and push forward. I'll tell you one key thing. If somebody gets interested in you and you start a little back and forth, like you meet with, a lot of people meet with these producers or something, they meet with somebody and they want to start talking about how to like push something forward. Make sure every time you sign off on a communication, there's some sort of like action item to initiate the next one. People are always like, how do I know when to contact next time? Well, you lay the seed the previous time by saying, all right, let me go blank and then I'll reach back. Or, if you ever, if you meet somebody who needs blank, and then they reach back. It's like set something where you can know some expectation of how it goes. They don't mind either. The handling of these relationships is you're human beings and you've handled other human beings before, and you should handle them that way. Like
Relationship.
how do I handle networking relationships? Just like any other human that you have a relationship with. And if you don't have a relationship with a human, reach out separately and I'll explain them to you in another forum.
They take time, years. So it's not overnight. It's not just, oh, who do you know? And then bam. And like, yeah, they take a lot, a long time. And speaking
Yes.
of reps and agents, we do have a question. Someone Kiffin asked, I had a manager pre-pandemic that switched to a big agency and we lost touch when I went through a personal tragedy. I've reached out recently, but he hasn't responded. Any advice?
I mean, if people don't respond, it's usually them telling you something without telling you. They've seen it. You know what I mean? It's not like it sits there and so could it occasionally just slip through the cracks? Absolutely. Most of the time, is it slipping through the cracks? No.
Just move on.
Yeah. Listen, if you have a rep that isn't doing anything active for you and you haven't talked to them in a long time and this and that, you don't have a rep. You know what I mean? Like a real rep is somebody who's out there thinking about you like daily and talking about you to people and trying to move things around, somebody that you check in with every 3-4 months just to see if anything's up. It's like, no, the real relationship is like that invigoration. And when you first get somebody interested in you, you got to play that stuff right. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't, you got to like, there's an episode of Seinfeld where Elaine is talking about dating and she's like, I'm trying to get a little squirrel to come over to the corner. I don't want to make any big movements. And it's like, that's how those early days, rep relationships are. If somebody shows interest in you, don't let weeks go by. You know what I mean? Like don't lose time and momentum. Don't suddenly go back and decide to do a last minute rewrite. If you didn't feel confident about it, you shouldn't have been out there querying anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like you gotta go when the moment is there. The one philosophy I've carried business wise with relationships through this whole thing is, if it's on me, if they're waiting on me, I got to turn it back around as fast as humanly possible. If you know what I mean? I don't want to be the one people are waiting on. So you're going to wait on them the amount of time each individual merit decides that you will, but never be the one that makes them wait or anything. Just,
And speaking of meetings, and then Brandon's question, and not sure in specific scenario, but he asked, what stands out as the most important meeting of your career? And what do you feel you did right in that meeting?
Wow. All right. Well, look, I think there's two. The one that would probably have had the most net effect that you'd see is like meeting Mike Flanagan for the first time. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that was exactly the kind of situation I'm telling you about, and that we've talked about many, you know, that I've talked about with people many times. It's like friend of a friend introduced him. He had a screening of a really small like thing that he had made with his friends. I went to see it and thought, wow, you know, he's like 19 or something, but he's really got the goods. And we struck up a little chat that lasted for like 3 or 4 years, and then like 3 or 4 years down the line, we hooked back up and started talking about ideas and stuff like that. So one of the most important meetings I ever had was a random, you know, offshoot thing, going to a movie because an acquaintance told me that there was somebody I might like who was out there, and I 99% of the time don't do that one, but that one time I did, and there it was. So like some you know, the biggest meeting of your life might just be the day that you walk into Starbucks or something and spill something on someone's suede shoe. Like you don't have any control over it. Professionally, the biggest meeting I ever had, I mean, you know, there's probably been a bunch, but I mean, just in terms of career net effect, it was probably like early 2000s, you know, pitching Ron Howard, what became probably still, what is still, at least financially, my biggest sale, and having like a Ron Howard attachment to take out and go pitch. That was like that I've never seen anything like it. It was like landing on Monopoly and like getting a free payday, and you were just waiting to find out how much it was. It was like, well, everybody, like once they knew Ron Howard was attached, it was 2003, I think, you know what I mean? Everywhere we went, it was just a done, it was just, you know, it was just like, oh, this is, you know, this is a done deal. And it was like, which one are we going to end up with? So yeah, that was probably just in terms of like pure raw, you know, like the other version, a formal meeting, that was probably the biggest one.
Great. And this kind of tailors on a little bit of just networking. How much of your work in progress is safe to share online?
How much? Oh, you mean of mine or of one's?
Oh, of ones. Like some people are posting their log lines, you know, there's that famous first page, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, you know, look, I think once again, not to sound like a cop out, but everybody has to make their own individual decision. And this is the equation that it is based on. What is your risk of exposure for this idea and something bad happening versus the upside of it being out there, or really literally nothing will ever happen if you don't put your stuff out there, you know? So if you're afraid to take those chances, you might as well not do the stuff, because if you're going to do stuff and not put it out, you're just Spinoza writing a great book about philosophy and then waiting till you die to publish it. You know, it's like, there's no reason to do that. So if you've written it, you got to try to put it out there. And individually, you got to just gut check each situation. There could be a person in a high rise on Sunset Boulevard who you feel weird about handing this script to or emailing this script to. And there could be a person that you passed by in a leather vest on, you know, like Hollywood Boulevard, who you feel absolutely comfortable, like as a person you get a good vibe from to share this thing with. Like use your vibes to your, you know, to people to tell you in situations whether it's good or not. About putting it online and stuff like that, I mean, if I had a really hot one-liner, I'm not really sure I'd put it online, because there's no one in the world who's gonna. I knew a guy once who had the best one-liner I'd ever heard, and I responded to it, and Jordan Peele responded to it, and we all three ended up talking at one point, and it was like, it was the best reaction that you could possibly get, right? Jordan Peele wants to talk about this one-liner, and when we did, it was, well, you know, put it together and come back and we'll do this thing. It wasn't like, let me just snatch this one liner and you got your Charlie and the Chocolate Factory golden ticket. You know what I mean? So it's like, even the very, like that dude put out a great idea and Jordan Peele answered, and it still wasn't an immediate, let's go do this, or that the thing ever got done. So don't suspect the drop it. Look, could it happen? Absolutely. But like, theoretically, you know, you could dangle an elephant off the edge of the flat earth. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, like whatever, you know, whatever you believe in. So it's like, yeah, like it's very unlikely.
So if you have that though, but have the goods to back it up.
I just don't know that putting a one-liner on Twitter or somewhere online is helpful to you. I just don't see it. You know, it's just, I mean, you're just literally just saying, like, especially if your whole idea is, well, I don't have a lot of contacts, I don't have a lot of places I could take this. You're literally just handing it to dozens of people who do. You know what I mean? So you're just putting yourself like even further behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
Just be aware, like I was involved in a lawsuit, like right at the very beginning of my career, like a giant lawsuit with a script thing. And I thought it would doom everything. And in the end, nobody cared. You know what I mean? It's like all these things that we all think are so big and important, they come and go.
So, okay. And
Were
okay, I
you
think
wrapping up
that's pretty much
soon?
for networking. Yeah. And just a couple last things because you kind of went on over. Okay. Or some of the, you kind of delved into coaching and business. What is your opinion on keeping to a common genre early in your career?
Yeah. Before you've sold anything, write whatever you want. Write your best idea at any given time. Once you sell something, they will tell you what your shingle is. There you go.
And then relationship to that, someone wants to update one of their favorite 80s shows, one of their favorite 90s shows. Should a newbie writer put time into spec reboots of projects IP that they do not own?
If you tell yourself going into it that it is most likely going to be your best sample, you could probably do some of your best writing in something like that. If you tell yourself, I can't make next month's rent and this is the means by which I will do it, you're probably screwed.
Yeah. Okay. And then we do have one business question. Is it typical to have, and this is from TJ, and she's watching. Hi, TJ. I think I saw her. Is it typical to have a producer who wants to do script revisions and attach talent without an option or shopping agreement? And is there a benefit to doing a handshake deal like this, or should you always have a contract?
These attachments are very dangerous because it is very, very difficult to get somebody like this off of the thing, even if they've never paid you a dime. Somebody who gets themselves attached to something and you've allowed them to represent themselves as attached to it, it's very, very difficult for you to get it back should you ever need to. So be very, very careful about these attachments that you enter into. And it is always better. Look, is it better to get something on paper? Sure, but only if you have a lawyer dealing with it. If you yourself get something on paper, it's going to essentially turn out to be meaningless, like unless you just happen to be like a criminally disbarred lawyer or something. You know what I mean? It's like if you're not a lawyer yourself, they're going to outlawyer you in something that they're just handing you. So you just got to know that ahead of time. Is it worth taking the shot? You know what I mean? Listen, if this is your life story and the biggest one that matters to you and the thing handed down to you through generations of time and it's the honor of your world to put this thing forward, maybe not. If it's one of 12 things you got on a list and some people are showing some interest, maybe you take the chance. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all balanced out through the filter of, like if you've got one master project that you just love and that's your whole life, you better hang on to that very carefully and you better not like put it out there until you're putting it out there to people who really care. If you've got 11 specs that you've reworked over and over and you swear to God they're all amazing, what do you care? It's only 9% of your inventory,
Great. And then a few that are just more craft related. What is the best note you received that helped the story? And what is the best note you gave that helped someone else's story?
Look, I don't know about Gabe.
Nickering laugh.
Well, there's been a bunch about Gabe to Hell. I mean, I've been doing this a lot lately. I can't imagine just one, but I tell you, I've sat down with people and talked story individually and had a really good time. You know what I mean? There's an electrical flow when it's working that is always awesome to experience. And I felt it with like 5-6 new people lately. Of the 27 I've talked to, no, I'm just kidding. Felt that with a bunch of new people lately, and it's really fun. It's like, it's nice to feel that energy exchange and everything. So what was your question?
The best note that you've received, and I'm assuming that they're probably thinking like from producers,
Yeah.
development.
I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, the best note that I ever received, it was me and Flanagan. It was the Oculus pitch. We pitched them a story. If you know that movie, it's 2 timelines, but they both take place in like the childhood house of the lead characters. The original incarnation of it, the present day took place in the warehouse of a auction house, and the past took place in the house. And in the very first meeting, the producer, one of the 2 producers at the time, said, "Hey, wouldn't it be more efficient?" He's like, not to be crass, but wouldn't it be more efficient if this was one location and they just went back to their childhood home? And like Flanagan and I just sort of looked at each other in that moment, like every moment of cutting back and forth between the timelines and overlapping the things and all the stuff that made Oculus really special, and especially for the third act really held it together. We're just all born like in that instant, in that note, So great notes are great notes. One of the wisest people I ever met in this industry was like, look, a good idea is a good idea. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Like don't care where you take ideas. Good ideas are good ideas.
Great. And okay, and this one is from, we have to give shout out, Blake. What new perspective, energy do you think the newest generation of writers are bringing to the table these days?
I think that what they don't like, I think it's about what they don't like as much. And I think that there's like a level of artifice and like bigness, like unnecessary bigness and scope to projects that people who are starting out and especially of this new, the newest generation that's getting out there in the world to do this, it's like they just don't like to put up with that. They keep things very real, and they absorb their influences just like we absorbed ours, but their influences are a little like the storytelling is a little more intimate and a little more one-on-one, like they, like in a way that people of my generation absorb their storytelling influences from Spielberg and and the people going back before that. They're drawing them from movies, TV, games,
The info age. Yeah, they grew up in the digital age.
yeah, like it's a whole different level of programming, and you can feel it in the storytelling, and it's cool. It's like it's more of now. It's why it's why people look at movies from the 40s and 50s and say, I can't watch that. It's too slow. It's like, well, it's just, it reinvents itself every once in a while. And that's what the Blake generation is doing, is reinventing it to match life at the pace that they see it and live it.
Okay, and from Daisy If You Do Productions, I forgot which writer this is. Reveal yourself. Have you heard about reluctance from reps to take on new clients who are older, 40 plus?
Have I seen what about reps?
Reluctance from reps and managers to take on new clients who are prime time.
I'm trying to think if I've seen anything specific. It's like, there's no doubt there's a vibe that reps give about what they look for. You know what I mean? It's like, there's two things a rep are looking for: a raw new voice that they can get out in the world and shape, and a blue chipper earner who's out there just making money. You know what I mean? It's like, those are the two things they really look for. So be one of those two things. Or preferably be one part of a team that has one and the other, and you really get somewhere. Yeah, anyway, what's your question?
That was it.
Good.
Thank you, Daisy. And I think that's it, no matter what, no matter the stats, you always produce your A game, get out there. And
about this over 40 thing, look, in features, it's really about what's on the page. And if they read something and they love it, they're never going to know or care until later. And by then they won't care because they got it on the page. It just doesn't matter. With TV, I think that bias is more real, but I think it's a bias because the idea of television is that it largely functions to people between like 16, 13 and 40 or whatever those demographics are. And it's like, but I think that's changing too. And I think as that perception changes, as Gen X becomes the new baby boomers and now holds on to things, you'll see people in their 40s, 50s, and hopefully even 60s, like continuing to work and get those jobs, because I think Gen X is that age and nobody wants to see themselves as old. So it's like, I think it's as Gen X takes over, like, metaphorically, as Prince Charles finally takes over for Queen Elizabeth II. Not that Prince Charles is any great treasure, but you know what I mean? Forever waiting on the brink. As Gen X forever waiting on the brink starts to really take over and assert itself, I just think a lot of those things will go away because they're a mechanism of the previous generation to even us. They're kind of outdated constructs. And I think in the 80s and 90s, it was the youth movement was really important. I feel like in the 20s now, the authenticity movement is the real one.
Sorry, I'm just like everyone's just jumping in. I just have to say, can I just add one thing that people don't realize, and maybe they do, but I just want to back up a little bit with mentors and networking, coaching, all that kind of stuff. People are busy. And I know you guys have seen Jeff around a lot because he has the advantage of working at home. But some of the people that you are trying to reach, and I have very good friends who are in the industry, like I've known for years, and they are difficult. They are busy. They're traveling. They're hustling. And I'm fortunate to have a phone call, a couple times a year. So don't be discouraged. It is tough. Jeff has a higher probability of getting his calls and emails answered. I have a slightly less probability. So just keep that in mind, and, don't be encouraged. You don't want to bug people all the time, but, everyone, if you're trying to go up the ladder and chase people, they are chasing people as well. Everybody is chasing people. Jeff is chasing people. He's just not running around all over town every day. And we are so fortunate.
I definitely do. Everybody does. If you don't,
exactly.
you're doomed.
Yeah. And Jeff is busy. So, just because he's here live streaming, you see him on, social media and all these, but he is busy. He's got a lot of things going on. And
I tell you one thing, if you see me tweeting a bunch, it really means I'm typing, because that's usually like my little mental break while working is just like, so if you see like 4 in an hour, it's just like, oh, yeah, he's deep in it now.
Yeah. And things they'll move really slow, move really fast. So all you guys who are like, I sent this, nothing is predictable, not because things change all the time, with or without any disruption is right.
People, it's Here are the various things, and let's wrap up with this, Marsha, because we're coming up to an hour. Here are the various things that are going to happen when you send something to somebody. Number one, they reach back to you and tell you they love it, and they work it through the system. Number two, they reach back to you and they tell you they love it, but there's nothing they can do about it. Number three, they reach back and tell you it wasn't for them. Number four, they ghost you because they're afraid you're the next Spielberg and they don't want to piss you off. Number five, they ghost you because they never read it and they don't want to have to admit it. Number six, they ghost you because the coverage came back and it was terrible. It's like, any number of things can happen and nobody can predict which ones they are. And one of the disastrous sides of opening doors for people is you can't control what happens on the other side of that door. You have no control over it whatsoever. So it's like, when you hear back, I've heard back from people where they're like, we're doing this. And I've heard back from people where they're like, which one? What are you talking about? It's like, you get every single reaction from every single person. And you just got to keep trying. That's all.
Yeah, because so many writers are like, Marsha, I sent this, blah, blah, blah. And I haven't heard. I go, you know what? Those people are getting 1,000 times the volume emails. So, kind of put themselves in your shoes. It is frustrating, but what business, what industry, what isn't, burdensome in this world? Think about the telemarketers. How many times we turn down telemarketers? We get so many calls. So just put yourself in their shoes as well, and you're one of probably 1,000 people that are trying to reach them this week.
Remember, the good news is, though, it doesn't feel like if you'd have came to me, and sorry for my sudden lack of English language, if you'd come to me when I was in high school and said you're 70% of your adult life is going to be a combination of high school speech class and used car sales, I would have thrown up in my mouth and run in the other direction. You know what I mean? But the good news is, as that is now 70% of my life in this incarnation and how things are, it's not so bad, because it's not like you're out there selling something you don't believe in. So what you find out is that, and why do people tell you to do what you love? Because when people tell you do what you love, part of what they're telling you is you have to be a salesperson too. So if you do what you love, you don't feel like you're being some, like sell out wrong, like pure salesperson. You feel like you're somebody who's out there hustling along stuff that you really care about. So that's the trick. So just tell yourself early on. It's like, even the best are out there selling. You know what I mean? All those people you see with big production companies, you think this fact they're constantly selling, and they're selling their own stuff and now other people's stuff too. It's like, and their humanity gets reduced accordingly. So it's like, just tell yourself the truth about what this industry really is, as you get.
And you know what? That is just life. Kids who are parents who are trying to sell, goods for the kids, games and things like that. It is just life. Everyone is selling for something else. Nothing different. So don't give up, everybody. But thank you, Jeff. And thank you, everyone, for.
Listen, if it wasn't the best job in the world, I would tell you to give up, but it is. So it's totally worth it. And it is.
Oh, one question. OWAs.
What about them? OWAs are established writers chase OWAs. When they get a little lull, they turn, I'll tell you one thing about OWAs, as somebody who reads a lot of that stuff, is I've read a lot better stuff coming out of the things that we do than I've read from some of those things that you get hired to rewrite. So there you are. They're just, I couldn't get near an OWA until after Oculus came out. You know what I mean? Even once I sold things that didn't get made, I still couldn't get near those things. And then after something actually finally came out, then all of a sudden they start pursuing you. Oh, we'd love for you to take a look at this. We'd love for you to take a look at that. And it's like, ha, where were you 9 months ago when I desperately needed you and was begging for this, so, this kind of thing to happen. So yeah, they're largely, you're largely invited to that party, essentially.
Great.
Sorry.
Before we close, I just want to say thank you, everybody. I hope that answered it for you, JR. And just stay posted because we do have a special Halloween live stream coming up, Halloween guest, end of this month. And Saturday on October 14th, we have Joseph Malazzi, from showrunner from Stargate and Dark Matter. I'm so excited. So
Let's
yes.
get sci-fi. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, listen, thank you, everybody. Marsha, it's been a treat.